All right, today we are diving into one of the most powerful books I think I've ever read, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And look, this is so much more than just a story about survival. It's a deep, profound look at how we find purpose when we're faced with the absolute worst of human suffering. And it's all told by a psychiatrist who actually lived through it. So to really get what Frankl is talking about, we can't just start with the theories and the philosophy. We have to start where he did. We have to go inside what he called an abnormal situation to understand the brutal question that Auschwitz asked every single person who walked through its gates. Okay, so try to picture this. You've been on a crowded train for days. You finally get off, and you're standing in front of an SS officer. And with just this casual flick of a finger, he points you either left or right. Frankl says nobody had any clue what that little gesture meant. But it was everything. Left meant the gas chamber. Right meant you were headed for forced labor. Your entire future, your very existence, was decided in a single, silent moment. And for those who went right, the so-called lucky ones, the process of erasing who they were had just begun. Frankl describes how they were forced to dump everything they owned, watches, photos, even their wedding rings. And then, all their hair was shaved off. Every last link to their past lives was just severed, gone. Frankl's own words here just capture the sheer totality of that loss. You know, he actually tried to hide the manuscript for a book he'd been working on his whole life, and a veteran prisoner just laughed at him and yelled, "Shit." And in that instant, Frankl said he felt like he had to strike out his entire former life. All that was left was just the simple, bare fact of being alive. So this brings us to the central question of the whole book, right? When they take your name and give you a number, when they take your clothes, your family, your entire past, what is actually left of a person? Frankl's answer to that is really the heart of everything he teaches. Because from this place of absolute nothingness, Frankl noticed something incredible. He saw that survival, it wasn't just about who was the youngest or the strongest. He realized that the prisoners who had a reason to live, some future goal or purpose to cling to, they were the ones most likely to make it. And this became his core idea, the will to meaning. This quote from Nietzsche was everything for Frankl. He saw it proven right in the most horrific ways, day after day. He saw that the prisoners who lost hope, who lost their why, they were often the first to go. It wasn't just starvation that killed them. It was hopelessness. But if you had a purpose, you could find the strength to endure almost any how. And here's the wild part. Frankl had actually come up with this theory before the war. He called it logotherapy. So, where Freud said our main drive is for pleasure and another guy, Adler, said it was for power, Frankl came along and said, nope, you're both missing it. Our deepest human need is the search for meaning. And the concentration camp, in the most terrible way you can imagine, became the ultimate proof that his theory was right. Okay, so finding meaning sounds great, but what does that actually look like? Well, for Frankl, this wasn't some fuzzy, abstract idea. He was incredibly practical. He identified 3 very clear, very concrete ways that anyone, even someone in the depths of despair, could find a real sense of purpose. The framework he laid out is actually pretty simple. He said you can find meaning, first, through your work, by creating something or doing a deed. Second, you can find it through love, by caring deeply for another person. And third, and this is maybe the most important one, when you can't change your situation, you can find meaning in the attitude you choose to take toward that suffering. And Frankl himself found his own why in that second path, love. He tells this incredible story of marching for miles in the freezing dark to a work site, and he would just conjure up this vivid image of his wife in his mind. He'd have entire conversations with her. And in those moments, he realized that love was a kind of salvation, a strength that his brutal physical reality just couldn't break. So this all leads us to what is, for my money, the single most powerful idea in the entire book. It's the idea that even when every single thing is taken away from you, there is one freedom, the last human freedom that no one can ever touch. And it really all comes down to this. The Nazis could control your environment. They could control your body. They could control what happened to you. But they could never, ever control how you chose to respond on the inside. Frankl saw men comfort others and give away their last piece of bread. He realized that between the thing that happens to you and your reaction to it, there's a little space. And in that space lies your power to choose your attitude. That is your ultimate freedom. And this is the profound takeaway from that freedom. Now, Frankl was a realist. He knew that very few people were able to maintain that kind of inner dignity. But he argued the fact that even one person could do it is all the proof we need that our inner strength can lift us above our outward fate.
Our dignity isn't about our circumstances. It's about our choices. To really see how much Frankl lived this philosophy, there's a pivotal story from his life that happened before he was ever sent to the camps. It's just the perfect parable for his whole way of thinking. So, just before the war really kicked off, Frankl gets an American visa. This was his golden ticket, literally a chance to escape the Nazis and go continue his important work in safety in the United States. His elderly parents couldn't get one, but they were thrilled for him and they urged him to go. But Frankl was just tormented by the decision. I mean, what do you do? On one hand, you have your life's work, your brainchild, as he called it, which you could save. But on the other, you have your parents, who you'd have to leave behind to face a terrible fate. He was stuck, and he said he was just desperately hoping for a hint from heaven. And then he got one. He was at home, and he noticed this small piece of marble sitting on a table. He asked his dad about it, and his father explained that he'd picked it up from the rubble of one of the great synagogues in Vienna that the Nazis had burned to the ground. It was a piece of the 10 Commandments. So Frankl asks him, which commandment is it? And his father tells him the Hebrew letter on it stood for the one that says, honor thy father and thy mother. And in that moment, Frankl knew exactly what he had to do. He had his hint. He stayed in Vienna and let the American visa expire. He chose his responsibility, he chose meaning over his own personal safety and success. That story is just the perfect embodiment of Frankl's advice for living a good life. He used to tell his students, don't aim at success. You can't chase it directly. He said success, and happiness too, they aren't the goal. They're the unintended side effect you get when you dedicate yourself to a cause that's bigger than you are. And that really brings it all back to us, doesn't it? Frankl's life and work completely flipped the script. He teaches us that our main job isn't to ask what we expect from life, but to stop and ask what life expects from us. So that's the question I'll leave you with. What cause is asking for your dedication?